Hello everyone and welcome to episode 6 of the Powering Thoughts podcast. So in this episode I'm actually going to be talking about 5 books that all played a massive role within my life in the views I have now and why I stress so much about the importance of meaning and the importance of finding a purpose and also the importance of self-development. So each of these books I actually read within a year of finishing university. So before university I didn't really read, and having read one of these books actually caused me to read and continue reading at quite an accelerated rate. So each of these books actually provide practical guidance on how to improve our lives, and I plan on highlighting some of the key takeaways from each of these books that can inspire and guide you on your journey towards personal growth or your journey towards a more fulfilling life. So the 5 books that we'll be discussing are The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, so I can't say the actual word, so that's by Mark Manson, and that one basically offers a refreshing take on self-help and encourages readers to embrace their values, take responsibility for their lives, and focus on what truly matters. Next will be a book called The Rational Male. So this one is actually quite a controversial book, and some people aren't going to be best pleased that I chose this one, but this one offers a thought-provoking analysis on male and female dynamics within relationships. So then we're going to dive into the 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. So everyone knows I'm a massive fan of Jordan Peterson, and this book obviously was his first main self-help book that he published. So this one provides sort of practical guidance on how to improve your life, find meaning and purpose, and how to take responsibility for your actions. I'm also then going to discuss the book Ikigai. So I've discussed this one in quite a lot of depth in one of my blogs, so you can go there to find even more information on it. But this one offers insights on finding your purpose and living a fulfilling life by aligning your passion, skills and values. And finally, we're going to explore the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl, which offers valuable insights on finding meaning and purpose in life, even in the most extreme circumstances. So I'm also going to suggest a couple of little bonus books. So these ones, obviously I want to do 5 key ones, but then also there were some which have seriously impacted me, but I was going to separate them as small bonuses just at the end, just to sort of go over just something that could provide a bit more value for some other people. So yeah, sit back, relax and enjoy. So the first book we're going to discuss is The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. So I'm going to refer to it as The Subtle Art. So this book is by Mark Manson. It is a self-help book that offers a counterintuitive approach to personal development and happiness. So after I left university, I briefly went to Paris, and upon returning, I went out to Gibraltar to see one of my best friends straight afterwards, and I actually saw this book in the airport. So this was back in 2018, which I believe it was around when it was published. Since then, it has gone on to be extremely successful. I believe if you look on Amazon now, it has something like 80,000 reviews, and they're actually making a movie about it. So the first key takeaways I took from this book is choosing your values. So Mark Manson emphasizes the importance of choosing your values and priorities in life, rather than just trying to please others in society. By understanding and accepting our values, we can live a more fulfilling life and make better decisions. So one of the best ways in which he describes this was that we have a limited amount of Fs we can give. If you give an F about everything, then you're going to obviously be overwhelmed. It's going to affect your mental health. And he goes that we have to be very selective on those things in which we're going to give an F about. So in this case, if you actually are able to categorize and state objectively what your values are, then it makes it a lot easier to decide what you're actually going to give an F about. So if a value of yours is that you're going to be honest, when something comes up that goes against that, it's a lot easier to go, that's against my values, so I'm not going to do that. His second takeaway is embrace pain and adversity. So the book argues that pain and adversity are all inevitable parts of life, and that we should embrace them as opportunities for growth and learning. So by accepting the struggles and challenges that come our way, we can actually become more resilient and develop a greater sense of purpose. So I always stress this sort of idea as well. So obviously there's that quote I always reference from Carl Jung about, for your branches to reach the heaven, your roots must also reach down to hell. So through having negative experiences is what actually gives us a true appreciation of good experiences. So if we were to always only have good experiences, obviously we would actually become desensitized to them. And with that happening, we would never actually be able to move forward and develop, and we'd always remain comfortable and actually extremely unsatisfied. So it's actually through having the negative things that happen in life that actually allow us to appreciate when we have the good things. So in that sense, we should actually embrace pain and adversity, because those are the things that help us become who we could become through allowing us to more truly appreciate the good things that happen in our life. The next thing is he stresses about taking responsibility for your life. So in The Subtle Art, Mark Manson encourages readers to take responsibility for their lives and stop blaming external factors for their problems. By taking ownership of our choices and actions, we empower ourselves to create the life we want. So this is one thing that I've found that's sort of universal across all self-help books, but it's a very, very good point. And it's the idea that the entire circumstances of your life are made up by your thoughts. And so the only way in which you can actually change it is to stop blaming other people and to take responsibility that it is completely up to you to change the circumstances of your life, and that starts with your thoughts. So obviously, if you're not happy with your situation, you're not happy with the things that exist around you, then it is up to you to say that I am changing this and this is what I am going to do. And so you sort of remove the negative aspects that you're saying are keeping you chained and holding you down, and you go, right, it's my responsibility to change this, and you actually map out how you're going to do that, and that is what allows you to take the steps forwards and to change your circumstances. The next thing he talks about is prioritizing what really matters. So the book advocates for prioritizing the things that truly matter in life rather than getting caught up in the superficial or fleeting pleasures. By focusing on what's important, we can find greater meaning and purpose in our lives. So again, this is another thing that's stressed across all self-help books, and it's the whole idea that we have a limited time on the earth, we have a limited amount of seconds, and every single second that we waste worrying or concerning ourselves about something that doesn't matter is a second and a minute away from our lives and what we could be focusing it on. So there's that idea that at the end of your life, you end up regretting the risks that you didn't take, not the ones that you did. When he says about prioritizing what really matters, it would be, look, you're going to have a limited amount of time with your family, with your friends, and if you're focusing on the next promotion, the next job, the next material possession, you're actually taking time away from those people that truly matter and actually impact your life. Because at the end, all you're going to think about really is those people that you cared about the most. And everything is finite, so everything will end. There will come a point where the amount of times that you see your parents, you see your friends are limited. So if your grandparents are in their 80s or 70s or something like that, and you only see them once a year, it might be the fact you only see them 10 more times. So be aware of the limited amount of time that we have so that you really can get a true appreciation for the things that don't exist forever, that allows you then to make the most of it while you have it, so that when it does leave, you don't end up regretting it or grieving about it longer than necessary because you feel guilty for the time that you didn't give. And the last point that he makes is about embracing uncertainty. So he encourages readers to embrace the uncertainty of life and let go of the need of control. By accepting that life is unpredictable and uncertain, we can reduce our anxiety and stress and learn to live in the present moment. So this whole idea of living in the now, I think, is absolutely, it's so important. It's the whole idea that who you are now and who you are in 2 weeks isn't going to be any different. So why delay what you could do in this moment and say you're going to do it in 2 weeks? In this second right now, you have the actual possibilities of doing any single thing that you wanted. Everything is possible. So if you didn't want to be in your job anymore, if you wanted to move away, you can actually take those actions in which would end that and change it. But you can only ever do that within the now, so this second, because obviously the past is behind you and the future's ahead. You cannot change either of those. The only time you ever have any autonomy or power to change anything is right now in this moment. So there's no difference between this moment and a moment that's 2 hours away. So why not just make the decision now? So it's the whole idea that if you're embracing uncertainty and you let go of your need of control, you're stopping trying to calculate and force things to happen. And just by living in this moment and making the most of every single moment, you end up unconsciously allowing those things that you're trying to control to actually happen, because you sort of let go of the reins and you've allowed life to unfold as it should by taking the positive actions towards those outcomes. So the next book is The Rational Male. It's quite a controversial book. It was actually the book that's got me into reading. I've told this story so many times where I was sat on a coach going to Paris and a friend of mine told me to read the first page of this book, and I was like, I don't see the point. I don't really want to. And he goes, no, just do it. Just honestly read this first page. And so I was like, if he wants me to read it, there's a reason as to why he wants me to read it, which means that he thinks there's something in this in which I can learn, or it's going to be a reflection of I can understand this person better by reading this book. So I read the first page, and honestly, the first page ended up turning into 30, and I instantly bought the book on Amazon and I actually didn't want to go to Paris anymore. I wanted to go home and finish reading this book. So this book, The Rational Male, is about intersexual dynamics, and the book sort of provides valuable insights on relationships, dating, and personal growth. And so there was a time in which I read this. It was not long after I went through a breakup. It was a breakup from my first serious relationship. So having read this, it was eye-opening, and I've never had this experience before where I'm reading pages and it's actually causing me to become depressed, because I was like, that was me, that's what I did that wrong, I should have done that better. And it just sort of smashes a glass and makes you realise sort of what you weren't aware of or what you could have done better. And so in that sense, I think it's such an important book, because for anyone to read it, male or female, you can take away so much about how males and females are very different within their approach to dating and relationships, and this very much helps people see both sides. So the first key takeaway of this book was understanding intersexual dynamics. So this book argues that men and women have fundamentally different mating strategies, and that understanding these dynamics is key to a successful relationship. This book emphasizes the importance of understanding human nature and the biological drivers of attraction. So this book actually takes a very psychological approach to everything it talks about. So it actually brings up a lot about evolutionary psychology, social psychology, and it sort of explains things from a perspective in which we can all understand. So I remember reading the first page, and it talks about how there's a thing called one-itis, and it's about having an unhealthy, unreciprocated sort of obsession with one person. And it sort of talks about how if you do that, you actually prevent yourself from developing and moving forwards and growing as a person, because you are fixated on someone on a pedestal that actually then prevents the opportunity for you to move forwards and grow. So going straight on to the next point was about prioritizing personal growth. So Rollo Tomassi sort of encourages men to prioritize their own personal growth and development rather than focusing solely on their relationships. The book argues that becoming the best version of yourself is essential for attracting and maintaining healthy relationships. So this sort of point is actually through a lot of books, and it's the whole idea that some people, when they're in relationships, look for that whole savior, and the other one tends to be a victim mindset. And it's the whole idea that within a relationship, both people should have their own goals, striving towards their own ideals, and you actually come together to assist the other person with it, but it's not your responsibility to sort out someone's life. Because often your partner doesn't want you to sort out their problems for them. They want you to almost be an ear and to almost sometimes help them, allow them to sort out their own problems. So it's important that within your own relationship, you also need to have your own goals within it, because if the relationship ever does end, and that held the basis of the whole of your identity as a person, then almost when that person goes, you'll almost lose half of yourself, and you've got to then fill in that space again. Whereas if you actually have your own goals that you're striving to within the relationship as an individual, then if anything did happen, then you would still have your own self-identity, and you actually knew where you were going, and it would be less distressing, and you would feel less loss if it ever did come to an end. The next point sort of talks about taking control of your life and living your life intentionally rather than allowing other people to live it for you. So this one sort of talks about encouraging people to take control of their lives and not relying on others to provide a sense of purpose and validation. So the next point is about taking control of your life. So encouraging people to take control of their lives and not rely on others to provide a sense of purpose and validation. This book emphasizes the importance of personal responsibility and agency in shaping one's own destiny. So again, it's sort of like the same idea that stop looking for others to tell you who you want to be or to tell you how to get to where you want to go. It's important to have your own goals and to strive towards it, and to sort out the problems and the hurdles as they come up. It's not a hurdle arrives and you ask someone else to tell you how to jump over it and then look at them to clap for you now that you've climbed over it. It's to run that race and to jump the hurdles yourself, for yourself, not for anyone else. And then that is how you actually become the best version of yourself. And through doing that, you actually attract people who are like-minded to you. The next one is about communicating effectively. So the book argues that effective communication is essential for successful relationships. and that men need to develop the ability to express their needs and desires in a clear and assertive manner. The book shows the importance of developing good communication skills and establishing healthy boundaries in all aspects of life. So this is just goes without saying, I think every relationship book ever has talked about the importance of stating what you need. Well, I remember in this relationship that I was in before I read this book, how if the other person was down, I would do everything I could to bring them up, but I would never state or actually be clear about when I was down. So it actually became that whole thing where trying to sustain someone else, you're almost draining your own battery. So what you actually need to do is clearly communicate how you are both feeling so that you actually are quite explicit and actually know exactly where the relationship is at all times. Because then if someone is down, the other person can be up and you can actually balance each other out. But the whole point is that you shouldn't be balancing someone else at the behest of yourself, because then all that happens is you're actually draining yourself, and that relationship ends up being quite unhealthy because you are taking on more weight than necessary to sustain two people, and that's not anyone's responsibility. Everyone should be able to sustain themselves, and then together you come together and actually make something that's even better. The next book is called A Man's Search for Meaning. This book is honestly phenomenal. It was written by a psychiatrist called Viktor Frankl. It's actually survived Auschwitz. So this book is a memoir and sort of a psychological exploration of his experiences in a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. So the book provides valuable insights on the importance of finding meaning and purpose in life, even in the most extreme circumstances. I can't stress how amazing this book is. And so the first takeaway that it talks about is finding meaning in suffering. So Viktor Frankl argues that even in the most extreme circumstances, we can find meaning and purpose in our lives. The book shows the importance of finding meaning in suffering and how it can help us endure the most difficult situations. So in this book, he actually talks about how those who were good people actually didn't make it through the concentration camp, and those people who didn't have people in mind that they wanted to see again, or didn't have a reason for being or a reason to stay alive, didn't make it through. It was only those that were able to justify the suffering for an end goal that allowed them to survive that long and to do the things that were necessary to survive. So the next point following on from that is he talks about the importance of choosing your attitude. So Frankl emphasizes the importance of choosing our attitude even when the circumstances are beyond our control. The book argues that our attitude and perspectives can help us to cope with difficult situations and find meaning in our lives. So again, this is very similar to Mark Manson's Subtle Art. It's the whole idea that you can either choose to feel oppressed, which then obviously is going to cause even more psychological impacts on yourself, or you can understand that fact but then take on the responsibility of choosing your attitude to overcome it. The next takeaway is the value of human connections. So the book emphasizes the importance of human connections and how they help us to find meaning in our lives. So Frankl's experiences in the concentration camp show the importance of social support and how it can help us to endure even the most difficult circumstances. So he talks about this, and I think again across so many books, it stresses the whole idea that you can't do everything alone. We are social creatures, and the best way in which we can actually prosper and survive and grow is through the assistance of others. And in this case, if you were to isolate yourself from others, you'd actually be more likely to actually die, because you wouldn't be able to create the connections that would actually allow someone to give you a little last bit of bread, a last bit of soup. Those sort of things would actually help you survive just another day. Another point he talks about is to pursue a higher purpose. So Frankl argues that pursuing a higher purpose, such as contributing to society or helping others, can give our lives meaning and purpose. So the book shows the importance of finding a sense of purpose beyond our individual needs and desires. So again, this actually stresses the same idea as Buddhism about your purpose is called your dharma, and that's often found in service of others. So if you're just trying to live to self-gratify and own a lot of material possessions, it's actually a very shallow sense of living. And even in Japan, which I'll come on to in the next book, they talk about how they have the most centurions in the world because they have a sense of community. Whereas in England, what we tend to do is we work up until the point where we retire so that we can escape from other people, which then obviously causes a lot of people to be lonely, which then obviously by subsequent causes them to actually die, unfortunately. So it is the importance of being around others and being a part of a community and actually provides us a higher sense of purpose that actually sustains us for a lot longer. And the last point that he makes, which is very similar to so many other books again, is the embrace personal responsibility. So the book emphasizes the importance of personal responsibility and the power of choice. Frankl argues that we have the power to choose our attitudes and our responses to circumstances, and that taking responsibility for our lives help us to find meaning and purpose. So he also in this book talks about this kind of therapy that I think is absolutely amazing. It's called logotherapy. So logo is from the word logos in Greek, which means meaning. And so he created a therapy in which it is to help people find meaning in life rather than looking back in the past and justifying psychological issues based on experiences with their family, for instance. So an example of this, as they talk about in the book, is how if you were to go to a logotherapist and you were to say, I can't stand my job, I can't stand my boss, I love doing art, can you explain this to me? A psychotherapist would say to you, the reason you don't like your boss is because of some issues that you had with your father when you were a kid, and art is basically a psychosexual expression of wanting to escape. Whereas logotherapy would say the reason you don't like your job and you don't like your boss is because you don't like your job and you don't like your boss. So go be an artist, because that is where you find meaning. It was just it always flips a lot of things on their head. And it's to say almost that your instincts are correct and you shouldn't be trying to look too deep into them to try and understand it. There's actually a sense of freedom that you can be found in through your own instincts and understanding of yourself. So the next book is called Ikigai, and now this book I've talked about so many times, and I've also written a very in-depth blog about it. You can actually go check that out, because it actually provides a really, really good philosophy on how we can find meaning in life. And in the blog itself, I've also put the diagram, which is what they use to define Ikigai. So this book explores the concept of Ikigai, which is the Japanese word for a reason for being, and the book provides valuable insights on how to find purpose, meaning, fulfillment in life. So the main takeaways from this book is about the first one being find your Ikigai. The book emphasizes the importance of finding your Ikigai, which is the intersection of your passion, mission, vocation, and profession. The book shows the importance of aligning these 4 elements of purpose and meaning in your life. So your reason for being is actually doing something that you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. And in the center, if you do all of them, you will actually find your reason for being, your Ikigai. The next point it's talked about is embracing a healthy lifestyle. So the book emphasizes the importance of maintaining a healthy lifestyle, which includes eating a balanced diet, getting regular exercise, and getting enough sleep. The book argues that the lifestyle factors are essential for achieving a long and happy life. So it's actually a really interesting idea in this, and it talks about how in Japan, they actually only eat until they're 70% full. And the whole point is that if you eat until you're stuffed, like we do at Christmas, and we're laying there, we just feel lethargic. What they talk about is how if you eat that much, then your body has to actually give a lot of energy to break that down and digest it. So it says how if you only eat to a 70% full, you actually have eaten enough of the nutrients in which that you need, and your body doesn't have to expend all that energy on breaking it down, allowing you then to actually live for longer. So it's almost the whole idea that if you're running a race and you sprint, you're going to run out of breath quicker, being that if you eat until you're full all the time, you're going to live less. Whereas if you actually take your time and you jog at a steady rate, you actually end up running a lot further distance because you're less tired less quickly. So just an interesting perspective that I thought was quite interesting as part of that. Another part that he talks about is to pursue your passion. So the book argues that pursuing your passion is essential for finding meaning and purpose in life. The book shows the importance of identifying your passions and finding ways to incorporate them into your daily life. So there was this fascinating thing it talks about, was one of the owners and artists at Studio Chihibe, I believe it's called, the ones who created the movies Spirited Away and My Neighbor Totoro. And basically when the creator got to the age of 60 and he was ready to retire, he did retire, but he would still turn up every single day and continue to draw and continue to create the art. And the whole point is that he was so passionate about it that even the day in which he retired, it wasn't a job anymore, because it was that thing he was so passionate and loved. Whereas for us, what we do is we end up doing these jobs that we're not passionate about, we don't really like it, and we're just doing it to fulfill the need of meeting our basic needs, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And because of it, we're trying to do this sprint again, where we're trying to get these promotions to get more money, but doing stuff that we're not passionate about. So the moment in which we can finally escape it would actually be like 40 years from now. And we look back and go, well, what was all of that for? Because then why would you wait until you're that old to find out what your passion is? And the next one again is how we talked about earlier, is to build strong social connections. So the book emphasizes the importance of building strong social connections, which includes spending time with friends and family, building new relationships, and giving back to your community. The book shows the importance of these social connections for achieving a long and happy life. So again, that goes into the idea that they found that through having this sense of community, they were actually able to have the most centurions in the world, because they are so connected together and they actually allow each other to sustain themselves for a lot longer, because they're doing what they're passionate about, they're being healthy, and they're spending so much time with their community that they have a complete and fulfilled life. So they actually have all of their faculties, even when they are over 100 years old, because they are living such a complete life that is hitting all the main pillars that we need to survive as people. And then the last book, obviously the one in which so many of the things that I talk about, being the 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. Now, I could talk about all of these books so much more detail, but I think this one is now one of those books that underlies a hell of a lot of my beliefs. So Jordan Peterson, this is a self-help book that provides practical guidance on how to improve your life and how to find meaning and purpose. So the main point that he talks about throughout the book is taking the responsibility for your life. So obviously he emphasizes the importance of taking responsibility for your life, including your thoughts, actions, and decisions. And he argues that taking responsibility is the first step towards improving and finding meaning and purpose. So I remember there was this really interesting idea that he said once, where he goes, you want to be the most reliable person at your father's funeral. And it's the whole idea that everyone there is going to be in pieces and absolutely destroyed. And it is something to aspire to be the strong person that's able to be the rock that helps other people. And he goes how through life you're going to find obviously those difficult things, and it is up to you to bear the weight of your life and to still continue to take steps forwards every day. Some of the rules in this book are absolutely brilliant. So the first one obviously talks about standing up straight with your shoulders back, and it talks about the biological effects and sociological effects that it has on other people. So if you're having the worst day of your life, he talks about how if you were to still walk down the street, if you're standing up straight with your shoulders back, you look confident. So in the first couple of seconds that someone speaks to you, they are going to speak to you from the perspective of how they perceive you. And if they perceive you as being happy and confident, then that's how they will approach you. Whereas if you are having your shoulders hunched and you're looking away and not maintaining eye contact, then less people are going to actually speak to you. And from that, less good things are going to happen to you. There's going to be less opportunities for everything to completely change. So even if you're having the worst day of your life, it's about standing up straight with shoulders back, being confident, having a smile on your face, even if you feel absolutely terrible, because that was how people are going to react to you more positively. And that's what allows something to happen that will then actually make you feel happy and confident. And there's another one of the rules. It says compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today. And the whole idea of this is that in our society, we look at everything as we're all on this graph that's going up, and we're trying to look at someone else and trying to be 3 steps above them. Whereas what he talks about is you should actually just be running your own race. It's the fact that you should be able to look back and say, that's where I started. And then you look to where you are now and say, this is where I am today. And the whole important thing is if you take responsibility of your life and keep taking those steps every single day, the competition in which you should be having is with yourself, because you are the only person who has had the advantages that you have, the disadvantages you have, and has lived the life that you have. So stop comparing yourself to others, because they've lived a completely different life, and so to make a direct comparison is almost impossible. And then another one that he talks about is the whole idea of embracing obviously discipline and order. And I talked about this idea in quite a lot of detail in the last podcast episode. And it's the whole idea that we need to have our foot placed firmly in both order and chaos, because we need to be striving for more, but also in the place of being safe. And so the only way in which we can do that, it's to not dive straight into the deep end, but it's to dive in a place in which we know that we are capable and start pushing ourselves a bit further outside of our ability to do so, to actually allow ourselves to expand and allow ourselves to become more capable. So since 2018, I've actually read these probably the most out of all the other books I have. I do have a couple of other books that have also seriously influenced me. So for instance, the Steve Jobs book by Walter Isaacson, and the book provides like really valuable lessons on like innovation, leadership and personal growth. And the other one is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, who is the guy who created Nike. And again, this book just is phenomenal. And there's a quote in it it sticks with me to this day, and it says, "How can I change the world if I have never seen it?" And honestly, I absolutely loved that. And that will lead into what my next podcast will be, because I have some amazing news and I can't wait to share it. And yeah, so it's something to look forward to for the next one. So I hope that this episode has been inspiring and insightful, and that the takeaways from these books can help you to live a more meaningful and fulfilling life. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this. And if you have any feedback, I know it's a lot of a longer podcast episode than I've done previously, but yeah, thank you so much. And I look forward to sharing more episodes in the future and some more stories and ideas that will help you to find your own meaning, your own fulfillment and your own purpose in life. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.